Welcome back to Life Turns, everyone. Today, I have a story that is raw, emotional, and absolutely unforgettable. It's about the day I thought would be one of the happiest days of my life, my sister's wedding. But instead, it turned into a nightmare that shook me to my core. You'll feel every heartache, every betrayal, and the shocking twist that came when I least expected it. So, grab a cup of tea, get comfortable, and let's dive into this roller coaster of a story. I remember that morning vividly. The sun was shining, the birds were chirping, and our house was buzzing with excitement. My sister was getting married, and I was supposed to be one of her bridesmaids. Everyone was talking about her dress, the decorations, the flowers, and the food. But somewhere deep down, I felt a sense of unease. I couldn't pinpoint it, but there was a weight in my chest I couldn't shake. I brushed it off, telling myself I was just overthinking. After all, weddings are stressful, right? By mid-morning, the preparations were in full swing. The house was decorated beautifully, and my parents were fluttering around, giving last-minute instructions. That's when it started, the subtle jabs, the quiet whispers. My parents, whom I had always trusted and loved, began making comments about my life choices, about the man I had married, and even about my career. At first, I tried to laugh them off. I told myself they didn't mean it, that they were just stressed about the wedding. But as the day went on, the comments became sharper, more cutting, more humiliating. It all hit me like a ton of bricks when my father turned to me in front of our extended family and said the words I will never forget. "You're nothing but a barn wife," he said, his voice dripping with disdain. I froze. The room fell silent, and every pair of eyes seemed to pierce through me. My sister, standing beside her new husband, looked away awkwardly. My heart was pounding. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and completely alone. How could the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally say something like that, especially on what should have been a joyous day? I wanted to run, to escape, to disappear. But I had nowhere to go. I was trapped in the same room where my family was celebrating, where everyone was laughing and taking pictures, completely oblivious to the storm raging inside me. I tried to hold back my tears, but they came anyway, quietly at first, then streaming down my face. I felt invisible, worthless, and deeply wounded. How could my parents say such things knowing the pain it would cause? As I sat there, trying to process what had just happened, my mind was racing. I kept replaying their words over and over, questioning myself, questioning my choices, wondering if I had done something wrong. But deep down, I knew I hadn't. My husband and I had built a life together, full of love, trust, and mutual respect. We were partners in every sense of the word. Yet, in that moment, it didn't feel like anyone in my family could see that. The rest of the wedding was a blur. I smiled when I had to, nodded when spoken to, and took photos when asked, but it all felt hollow. I felt like a ghost moving through the crowd, invisible, yet painfully aware of every judgmental glance, every whisper behind my back. The love and joy that should have filled the day were overshadowed by shame and embarrassment. I felt like I had been cast aside, like an outsider in my own family. Then came the moment that changed everything. As my sister and her husband were about to make their grand exit, I heard the distinct sound of a helicopter approaching. I glanced out the window, expecting maybe a news crew or someone's extravagant arrival, but what I saw made my heart stop. My husband was stepping out of the helicopter, looking straight at me. There was a calm confidence in his eyes, a quiet strength that I hadn't realized I missed so much in the chaos of the day. He walked through the crowd, completely ignoring the shocked faces and the whispered comments, and came straight to me. I didn't know whether to laugh or cry, to scream or collapse in his arms. I just stood there, overwhelmed by a flood of emotions. When he reached me, he took my hand gently and whispered, "I'm here. I'm yours. Always." In that moment, I realized something important. The opinions of others, even those closest to you, don't define your worth. What mattered most was the love and support we gave each other, and nothing else. As we stood there, holding hands amidst the chaos, I felt a sense of liberation. The shame my parents tried to heap upon me was meaningless in comparison to the love I felt in that moment. I didn't need validation from anyone else. I didn't need approval. I had everything I needed right there, in the man who had come for me in the most dramatic, unforgettable way possible. Even as the wedding continued, with laughter and music and the clinking of glasses, I felt a newfound sense of strength. I didn't let the words of my parents define me. I didn't let their judgment cloud my heart. Instead, I embraced the love that surrounded me, the love that mattered. My husband's arrival was more than just dramatic, it was symbolic. It was a reminder that love, loyalty, and self-respect are worth more than the approval of anyone else. The night ended with a quiet moment for just the two of us. We sat outside, looking at the stars, and I shared every detail of the pain I had felt, the humiliation, the anger, and the sadness. He listened without judgment, holding me close, and in that embrace, I felt a healing that no words from my parents could ever provide. That night, I realized that life doesn't always go the way we expect it to. Sometimes, it throws the worst at us just before showing us the best. I know many of you watching might have experienced something similar, feeling judged by those who should love you most, being hurt by family or friends, feeling invisible, unwanted, or unworthy. If that's you, I want you to know one thing: your worth isn't determined by their words. Your value isn't measured by their approval. Love, respect, and happiness come from within and from the people who genuinely care about you. Never forget that. Looking back, the wedding became a turning point in my life. It taught me resilience, self-love, and the power of unconditional support. It also showed me that life has a funny way of balancing itself. Just when you feel broken, just when you feel humiliated and small, life has a way of reminding you of your strength. My husband's helicopter arrival wasn't just dramatic, it was a lesson. A lesson in love, loyalty, and courage. In the days that followed, my relationship with my parents became complicated. Some things were said that couldn't be unsaid, and some wounds took time to heal. But I realized that forgiveness and understanding don't mean accepting hurtful behavior, they mean choosing to rise above it, to protect your peace, and to focus on what truly matters. I chose love, for myself and for my marriage, over anger and resentment. Every time I think back to that day, I feel a mixture of emotions, pain, yes, but also empowerment. Humiliation, yes, but also liberation. That day, I learned that no one can define your worth except you, and that sometimes, life delivers the most unexpected heroes when you need them most. My husband's arrival didn't just save me from embarrassment, it reminded me of my own strength. Even now, whenever I face judgment or criticism, I remember that helicopter moment. I remember the clarity it brought. I remember the love that carried me through the storm. And I remind myself, life turns in the most unexpected ways. Sometimes heartbreak comes first, and then the joy follows, bigger and brighter than you ever imagined. I want everyone listening today to remember one thing: you are not your parents' opinions, your family's expectations, or anyone else's judgment. You are your own person, worthy of love, respect, and happiness. Life will challenge you, yes, but it will also surprise you in ways that make all the pain worthwhile. Keep your heart open, trust those who truly love you, and never forget your own strength. That's the story of my sister's wedding, the day I was called a barn wife, and the day my husband arrived in a helicopter, changing everything. It's a story about betrayal, shame, love, and redemption. A story about life's unexpected twists and the resilience of the human heart. And most importantly, it's a story that reminds us all that no matter how low we feel, love has a way of lifting us higher than we ever imagined. So, if you've ever felt judged, humiliated, or overlooked by those you love, take comfort in this story. Take hope in the fact that life always finds a way to surprise you. And remember, sometimes the most dramatic, unbelievable moments are the ones that teach us the most important lessons about ourselves and the people who truly matter. Thank you for joining me on Life Turns today. If this story resonated with you, make sure to like, share, and subscribe for more emotional, inspiring stories that show the highs and lows of life's unexpected twists. And remember, no matter what life throws at you, you have the strength to rise, to love, and to thrive. As the days passed after my sister's wedding, I couldn't stop thinking about everything that had happened. I tried to go back to my normal life, but the echoes of that day lingered in my mind like a shadow. Everywhere I went, I felt eyes judging me, even when no one was looking. The humiliation my parents had inflicted was heavy, but the support of my husband kept me grounded. He never let me doubt my worth, and slowly, I began to see that life was about more than the cruel words of others. It was about how I responded to them. I started to notice little things that I had overlooked before. The way my husband looked at me, with pride, the way he defended me quietly in front of others, and the way he celebrated every small victory with me. Those moments reminded me that family isn't just the people you're born with, it's the people who lift you up when the world tries to pull you down. It became clear that the love I had built with my husband was stronger and more meaningful than any judgment from my parents. One evening, I sat down with my husband and told him everything I had been feeling, the pain, the shame, and even the anger that I hadn't allowed myself to express fully before. He listened patiently, never interrupting, never dismissing my feelings. He held my hand and said, "You are amazing, strong, and loved. No one can take that away from you." In that moment, I realized that healing doesn't come from the approval of others, it comes from being seen and supported by someone who truly cares. Even though my husband was my rock, I still had to navigate the awkwardness with my parents. They noticed that something had shifted, that I was no longer the same person who would quietly accept their insults. Their words lost their power, and I started speaking up for myself. It was scary at first, confronting them and telling them how hurtful their comments had been, but every time I did, I felt a little lighter. Each conversation chipped away at the fear and replaced it with a sense of self-respect I had never known before. Life began to take on a new rhythm. I started focusing on my own dreams, my own career, and the relationships that brought me genuine happiness. My husband and I took small trips, explored new hobbies, and even started planning for our future in ways we had postponed for fear of judgment. I discovered that when you step out of the shadow of negativity, life has a way of surprising you with opportunities and joys you never expected. I remember one particular evening when we went out to a quiet spot near the lake. The sky was painted with shades of pink and orange, and the air was filled with a calm I hadn't felt in months. We sat together on a bench, talking about everything and nothing, and I realized something profound. Life's greatest moments often come right after the hardest ones. The humiliation, the heartbreak, and the pain had paved the way for a deeper, more meaningful happiness. Around this time, I also began to reconnect with some extended family members and friends who had always supported me. Their encouragement reminded me that even when your immediate family fails to see your worth, there are people who genuinely care. I learned to lean on them, to celebrate victories, and to seek comfort when needed. It was liberating to realize that family doesn't have to be defined by blood alone, it's about who truly loves and respects you. But even with all this newfound strength, I couldn't ignore the past entirely. The memory of my parents' words still stung, and there were days when I questioned why they could be so cruel. I learned that it's okay to feel that hurt, to acknowledge it, and to process it in my own way. Healing isn't about forgetting, it's about learning to live despite the pain and finding joy in places where you never expected it. One weekend, we decided to host a small dinner at our home. It was intimate, just a few close friends and relatives who had always supported us. The laughter, the warmth, and the shared stories reminded me of what real family feels like. I realized that life isn't about impressing everyone or meeting unrealistic expectations. It's about creating a space where love and respect thrive. That evening, I felt a sense of peace I hadn't known for a long time. In the weeks that followed, my parents reached out, albeit awkwardly. There were attempts at reconciliation, half-hearted apologies, and uneasy conversations. I listened, but I didn't rush into forgiving them. Forgiveness is a process, and I knew I had to prioritize my emotional safety. I had learned that protecting your own heart doesn't make you cold, it makes you strong. My husband stood by me through every difficult conversation, never forcing me to do anything I wasn't ready for. I also began to notice subtle changes in myself. I was more confident, more assertive, and more willing to speak my mind. I no longer let small comments or judgments affect me as they once did. Life had taught me a harsh lesson, but it had also given me invaluable tools to navigate the world with grace and strength. Every time I faced a challenge, I reminded myself of that helicopter moment, the moment when love showed me my worth. My professional life began to flourish as well. Freed from the constant weight of judgment and criticism, I pursued opportunities one had previously shied away from. I took risks, applied for positions I thought were out of reach, and embraced challenges with a sense of excitement rather than fear. It was as if the events of my sister's wedding had unlocked a new level of resilience and courage within me. Of course, not every day was easy. There were moments of doubt, days when memories of humiliation resurfaced, and nights when anxiety kept me awake. But with every challenge, I reminded myself of the love and support that had carried me through the darkest day of my life. My husband's unwavering presence became a constant reminder that I wasn't alone, and that love, real love, can make even the hardest moments bearable. I also started documenting my journey, sharing my story in private journals and through conversations with close friends. Writing down my experiences became therapeutic. It allowed me to process the pain, celebrate the victories, and reflect on the lessons I had learned. I realized that storytelling is powerful. It can help us heal and inspire others who might be going through similar struggles. Then came the unexpected moments of joy that reminded me life has a sense of humor. Small, spontaneous events, a surprise visit from a friend, an unplanned adventure, a heartfelt compliment, became little sparks of happiness that lit up my days. These moments taught me that joy isn't always about grand gestures. Sometimes it's found in the tiniest, most unexpected places. As my confidence grew, I began to set boundaries with my parents. I realized that protecting my mental and emotional health sometimes means limiting contact or adjusting expectations. This was difficult, but necessary. I understood that loving someone doesn't mean allowing them to hurt you repeatedly. Healthy relationships require respect, understanding, and mutual care, and I refused to settle for anything less. My social circle also expanded. I met people who shared my values, my sense of humor, and my love for life. These new connections reinforced the idea that family and community are about love, not obligation. I started attending gatherings where I felt valued, supported, and celebrated, and it was liberating to finally experience relationships free from judgment. Through all of this, I never forgot the helicopter moment, the day my husband arrived when I felt at my lowest. That single, dramatic gesture became a symbol of hope, strength, and unconditional love. It reminded me that life's most painful experiences often precede its most beautiful surprises. And it taught me to always hold on to the people who lift me up, no matter what storms come my way. Even my sister, over time, began to notice the changes in me. Our relationship evolved, moving from tension and awkwardness to understanding and support. It wasn't perfect, and there were still moments of friction, but the foundation of respect had been laid. I learned that relationships, even with family, require patience, communication, and empathy, and that change is possible when hearts are open. As the months turned into years, I found a rhythm that worked for me. I balanced my career, my marriage, friendships, and self-care. Life wasn't perfect, but it was fulfilling. I had learned that happiness is not about avoiding pain, it's about growing through it, embracing love, and recognizing your own strength. Every challenge I faced became a stepping stone toward a more empowered, resilient me. Looking back now, I can say with certainty that the trauma of my sister's wedding, the humiliation, and the shocking moments of judgment were catalysts for growth. I emerged stronger, more self-aware, and more capable of navigating life's complexities. It wasn't easy, and it took time, but the lessons were invaluable. I realized that life has a way of turning even the darkest moments into lessons that shape us for the better. I want everyone listening today to remember, sometimes the people we expect to support us most fail, and sometimes the love we need arrives in the most unexpected ways. Trust in yourself, cherish the people who genuinely care, and don't let anyone define your worth. Your life, your happiness, and your sense of self are yours to protect and nurture. And that's the beauty of life, it turns in ways we cannot predict. Pain transforms into strength, humiliation into self-respect, and heartbreak into moments of joy that remind us why we keep going. Every setback is a setup for a comeback, and every challenge carries the seed of a lesson that can empower us beyond measure. As life continued to move forward, I started noticing subtle changes in how I viewed myself and the world around me. The humiliation at my sister's wedding was still a scar, but it had transformed into a source of strength. Every time I remembered my parents' harsh words, I felt a spark of determination. I refused to let anyone's judgment dictate how I lived, how I loved, or how I pursued my dreams. That helicopter moment with my husband had planted a seed of courage, and now it was growing into a full-blown sense of self-worth that I had never experienced before. I began to pursue opportunities one had once feared. At work, I stepped up to take leadership roles, presented ideas I had long kept hidden, and networked with people who could help me grow. Each success, no matter how small, reminded me that the opinions of my parents were irrelevant. I started documenting my achievements, celebrating milestones, and realizing that life is too short to live under the shadow of someone else's disapproval. One evening, my husband and I decided to attend a family gathering together. It was awkward at first. The same relatives who had witnessed my humiliation were present, and I felt a familiar tightness in my chest. But this time, I approached the situation differently. I stood tall, walked with confidence, and let my husband lead with me by his side. We smiled, greeted people politely, and engaged in conversations without letting old wounds resurface. That night, I realized how far I had come. It wasn't long before I began having candid conversations with my parents. These talks weren't easy, and many times, they ended with frustration or silence. But I discovered that it wasn't about forcing reconciliation, it was about setting boundaries and expressing my truth. I let them know how deeply their words had hurt me, that their judgment was unacceptable, and that I would no longer allow it to control my emotions. Each conversation was a small victory, a declaration that I would not be diminished by their negativity. Through this process, I discovered something profound: self-respect isn't given, it's claimed. It's claimed every time you refuse to accept insults, every time you stand up for yourself, and every time you choose to embrace love over fear. My husband's unwavering support reminded me that love and validation can come from the right people, even if they aren't the ones you expected. And with that understanding, I began to heal in ways I hadn't imagined. As my confidence grew, so did my sense of independence. I started investing more time in hobbies and passions I had neglected. I enrolled in a photography class, joined a book club, and even started learning a new language. These activities weren't just distractions, they were affirmations of my identity outside of family expectations. I realized that nurturing yourself and pursuing joy isn't selfish, it's essential. One of the most powerful moments came when I hosted a small gathering of close friends and mentors. I shared my story, my struggles, and the lessons I had learned. I spoke openly about humiliation, betrayal, and how love had lifted me from despair. Listening to their reactions, the empathy, the admiration, the shared experiences, I felt a profound sense of connection. It was a reminder that vulnerability is a strength and that sharing our stories can inspire others to find their own courage. Despite all this progress, there were still moments of doubt. Some days, I would catch myself replaying the hurtful words in my mind, wondering why my parents couldn't see my worth. But each time, I reminded myself that healing isn't linear. It's messy, it's painful, but it's also transformative. I leaned on my husband, my friends, and my own growing sense of resilience to navigate these challenging moments. As my professional and personal life flourished, my husband and I started planning small adventures. We traveled to new cities, explored hidden gems, and created memories that were ours alone. each trip strengthened our bond and reminded me that life's beauty often lies in the experiences we create, not in the judgments we endure. These moments of joy became anchors, grounding me in happiness and helping me move forward with confidence. Then came an unexpected surprise. My sister reached out, asking to spend time together and talk about the past. I was hesitant, but I agreed, wanting to explore the possibility of healing our fractured relationship. Over coffee and long walks, we shared memories, misunderstandings, and regrets. It wasn't perfect, and forgiveness didn't come instantly, but the process taught me that reconciliation is possible when both hearts are willing. It was another step toward closure, another affirmation that life can turn even the most painful events into opportunities for growth. Around this time, I also began mentoring younger women in my community. Sharing my experiences, the humiliation, the heartbreak, and the dramatic helicopter moment helped them navigate their own challenges. I realized that my story had value beyond myself. It could inspire resilience, empower confidence, and remind others that setbacks don't define you. That sense of purpose became incredibly fulfilling. Even my social media presence started to reflect this transformation. I shared glimpses of my journey, moments of triumph, and personal reflections that resonated with many. The response was overwhelming, messages of support, stories of similar struggles, and expressions of gratitude poured in. It was a reminder that vulnerability connects us and that sharing our truth can impact lives in ways we never anticipate. Meanwhile, my relationship with my parents remained complex. There were moments of progress, small signs of understanding, but also setbacks and misunderstandings. I learned to accept that not all relationships will meet our expectations. Some people may never change, and that's okay. The important thing is to protect your heart, maintain your integrity, and cultivate the relationships that nourish you. Life continued to teach me lessons in patience, resilience, and self-love. I began practicing mindfulness, reflecting on my emotions, and embracing gratitude for the small joys. Each day became a reminder that healing is an ongoing journey, one that requires compassion for oneself and the courage to let go of what no longer serves you. Then came another dramatic twist. At a charity gala my husband and I attended, we unexpectedly ran into family acquaintances who had witnessed the infamous wedding incident. I could feel the tension, the judgmental glances, and the unspoken whispers. But this time, it didn't affect me. I walked with confidence, smiled politely, and engaged in conversations without fear or resentment. The humiliation that once held me captive had no power over me anymore. It was moments like these that solidified a key realization: life doesn't just hand you redemption, it requires you to claim it. The helicopter moment was symbolic, but the true power lay in my actions, choices, and mindset after that day. Every step towards self-respect, every act of love, and every boundary I set was a declaration that I was no longer defined by shame. Over time, I also began to embrace new traditions and celebrations with my husband, creating memories that were uniquely ours. We celebrated milestones, birthdays, and holidays with intentional joy and love, building a life rich with experiences and connection. These moments became a counterbalance to the painful memories of the past, reinforcing the importance of nurturing relationships that uplift us. I also took time to reflect on forgiveness, not just for my parents, but for myself. I forgave myself for feeling hurt, for doubting my worth, and for allowing their words to affect me so deeply. This self-forgiveness was liberating, allowing me to fully embrace the present and step into a future unburdened by past pain. One evening, as we sat on our balcony watching the sunset, my husband turned to me and said, "You've grown so much through all of this. I'm proud of the woman you've become." I realized that true growth often emerges from the hardest experiences. Life had thrown me into humiliation, judgment, and heartbreak, but it had also shown me resilience, courage, and the transformative power of love. With each passing day, I continued to rebuild my sense of self. I nurtured friendships, pursued passions, and prioritized my emotional well-being. I started journaling about gratitude, achievements, and moments of joy. The practice reminded me that life is full of twists, but we have the power to shape how those